I think it's important for all of us who are actually deeper into the market to eventually touch on the subject of metaphysics and crystals. Constantly, clients are coming into the warehouse, or we're getting DMs or emails, and people are asking me my thoughts and my opinions on crystals and metaphysics. And so the other night, I just so happened to have a really amazing conversation with a good friend of mine, and we recorded it, and here's the recording of it, and this is my take and my understanding, my personal opinion on metaphysics, spiritualism, and crystals, and I hope that this gives everyone my perspective. Again, it's just my opinion, and I hope that it helps you understand maybe where you're coming from.
I think that at some point, if you're in this business, you have to address the topic of metaphysics and spiritualism, because that's a huge narrative, if not the major narrative of the industry. I'm not talking about mineralogy or gemology. I'm talking about the crystal business itself and the use of crystals and why people buy the crystal, what it means for them, and why is it an industry that grew so rapidly, especially with the uptick in New Age. And so I think that the real question is, even if you don't believe or you do believe, the real question is, what do you believe? What do you think when it comes to the idea that crystals and minerals and stones have the ability to perform a metaphysical or spiritual task? But I think that the real issue isn't that that's part of the narrative. I think that the real problem we have in that narrative is that people are willing to just hear information and run with it. I don't think that enough people are actually doing the legwork. I don't think that people are really asking themselves what they believe and what they think. They just read something or watch a TikTok video or however they come across information, and instead of researching that information and experiencing that information, they just take that information as absolute and they run with it. And I think that that's the real cause of the problem. I think the major problem is misinformation. With that being said, if I'm going to address how I personally feel about this topic, which is crystals and spiritual properties, I think that my first concern is that, number one, we have to identify what metaphysics means. And people say the metaphysical this, that, but what does that really mean? And then people say spiritual this, spiritual that, but what does that really mean? And so I think that the most important thing here is not even, do crystals have a metaphysical or spiritual ability to do things? I think the question is, what does that even mean? And so for me, if something isn't practical, if it's not stable, then I have no interest in adopting that thought or developing that thought. So I have to come to my fundamental conclusions on a subject before I can actually even start to answer questions for myself. And for me, first off, is metaphysics is the study of the why, where physics is the study of what. Metaphysics is the study of why. And then spiritualism in itself, what does it mean to be spiritual? I think that that's a whole another dimension of conversation, but if I can just give my gist on it, which is not a short gist, but compartmentalize it as much as I can, I really think that spiritualism comes down to things that are easily identifiable. I think most people's compulsion towards speaking on metaphysics or spiritualism, for that matter, comes with some idea that the power is external, right? That there's something more than themselves, and that what they experience on a conscious level is not just the end of the story. And what qualifies a person to be spiritual, in my personal opinion, it needs to be defined. First of all, it can't just be that everyone has their own idea about what it means. There can't be like 30 different ideas about what spiritualism is. We need to come to a common ground there. And the thing is spiritualism isn't a belief system. That's the major kicker, right? Your spiritualism isn't a set of beliefs. And I really think that people should take the time to really digest that thought and understand what that actually really means for them. But spiritualism is something that you have access to, that you can perform. And then the question becomes, what am I capable of performing? Like, what do I actually have that's mine in this world? And there's two things. One is your work ethic, right? If you're working, giving 100% effort to what you're doing in life, and you do your best at everything you choose to do, then I think that that's your first qualification for being a spiritual person, is someone who's willing to give 100% effort. And I know that that's not as much a mystical, magical thinking, but it's the practicality of it. And then I think that the second thing really needs to be about your decision making, because that's really the only thing we have control over is the ability to make decisions. Really, we have no control over anything else. That's all we're afforded is choices and decision making. And so if you're making good choices, I think that makes you a spiritual person. If you're making bad choices, then I don't consider you a spiritual person. And I liken it to this, if I can just give an example real quick. So if you're learning from a spiritual master, and you come across a spiritual master and you see that they're kind of lazy, they're not giving 100% effort to whatever they're doing, do you really want to learn from that person? Is that the type of spiritual master that you would envision? And I think the answer is no. And then ask yourself, if you came to a spiritual master and you saw that they were making bad decisions all the time, would you want to continue taking your P's and Q's from that master? And I also think the answer is no. And so there is ways to define spiritualism on a fundamental level, and that can be done by anybody, regardless of your belief system. So it doesn't matter what you believe, you're still subjected to those two things. There's no compromising. You have to choose your work ethic in life, and you have to live by the choices you make. Those are the two things. And so I really think that that's where we need to start. And then we need to ask ourselves about the crystals. Why is it in the first place that I'm looking for an external source to heal me? And is it possible that something outside of myself is more powerful than what I currently have inside of myself? And I think the answer to that question is no. I think that the only reason something would be able to heal you is because you believe it so. If you don't believe it's going to heal you, then I don't think modern medicine can work on you, quite honestly. You take the antibiotic and you think in your mind, oh, I'm going to get better, and you get better. But how many circumstances I would imagine where people take medicine, they don't think the medicine's going to work, and it doesn't. And so that really leads us to a challenging place, which is coming to a conclusion based on, do I want to put my power and my thought consciousness into an external thing, or do I want to consolidate it within myself and actually use it to make the things happen for me that I want to happen, and not just rely on some mystical power to make things happen for you? Because that's not spiritualism. Spiritualism is not waiting for something to happen from some sort of handout that goes against the fundamentals, which is 100% work. You got to work like a dog. You have to give everything you got, and then you have to make really good choices in the process of that. And that's all it is. If you're doing that, then yes, a crystal can heal you.